Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the information session on professional development. My name is Keisha Lockyer, and I'm representing Skills Canada, Newfoundland, and Labrador. And here with me today is special guest Kim White from CCA, the Community Center Alliance, who will be presenting during this event on professional development. For those of you who don't know, Skills Canada is a not-for-profit organization that helps educate youth and other demographics on the various careers in skilled trades and technology. My job with Skills Canada is called the Employer Engagement Project Coordinator. So what I do is I reach out to employers and meet with them in order to figure out what skills they feel are in demand within their workplaces so we can help them bridge those skill gaps. I've gotten some feedback from employers and individuals throughout my research, which indicates that professional development is an area of weakness. Seemingly, it's a skill that many of us need to build upon. And because of this, I've asked CCA to come on and share their expertise on the subject. So I'll just hand it over to Kim and we'll get the information session started.
Awesome, thanks Keisha. So I do have a PowerPoint that I'm going to share just to sort of move us along and give you guys a visual so you don't have to look at me the entire time. And certainly, as Keisha mentioned, please do put questions in the chat box at any time. We don't have to wait till the end, but certainly at the end we can also take questions. So I'm just gonna, if you bear with me, I will try to see if we can get the PowerPoint up here. And I think it's good. All righty. So, so I'll start with a little introduction and just say thank you to Skills Canada and Keisha for reaching out and asking me to come and do this. I'm always excited to come and chat with people, not just to share whatever I've learned, but I always learn from other people. So I think, it's just great to have an opportunity to listen to what other people feel about, well, in this case, the topic of professional development, what you guys are doing around that or not doing, and how we can all kind of work together to lift that sector up, because as Keisha mentioned, it's very important, and I think a lot of people feel a little bit at a deficit as to how to approach it and what's good value for money if they're putting money into it, or for time as well, because time is money at the end of the day. So I am excited to be here, and please, like I already mentioned, don't hesitate to reach out with questions, and Jess is online to get those questions to me, and I'll see if I can help you guys get an answer. So just a little background about Community Center Alliance, because a lot of people don't know about us, and even people that do know about us are often a little confused about what we are and what we do. So we are a nonprofit with charitable status and incorporated back in 2012. And we came about as a unique collaboration of 5 of the major community centers that exist in social housing neighborhoods. So those 5 centers are Buckmaster Circle, Froude Avenue, McMorran Community Center, Rabbittown, and Virginia Park Community Center. So we work together. CCA is not an umbrella group to the centers. I don't control or manage the centers. A lot of people get confused about that. Each center has their own individual executive director. I'm a general manager of staff and programming that is placed into the centers to help lift up, in particular, education, employment, and right now we're getting into some food security work, but I'll talk about that a little bit later, a couple of slides later. So just sort of to get your head wrapped around some of the things that happen at the centers, I just put in a few little pictures there to sort of give you some of the energy that exists around the work we do. You can see lots of kids, lots of energy, of course, but CCA's work is mostly focused on adults, but kids' pictures always look so much nicer, so I threw them in there. Like I said to Keisha, I was I'm doing this presentation from home because the centers have a lot of energy and can be quite noisy. You just never know when a child is going to burst into your office when you're in the middle of a Zoom presentation. So I'm tucked away at home. But the centers are wonderful, boisterous places that have tons and tons of things going on. But I guess to back up a little, again, to clarify between CCA and the centers were established mainly around social and recreation mandate, recognizing a lot of people who were living in the neighborhoods in social housing wanted to participate in social activities, to be more connected, to have recreation opportunities that they probably couldn't avail of otherwise. So those centers have been around. They all have a different history, slight different history around how they got established. But all of them now are currently supported through Newfoundland Labrador Housing. We, the CCAs, we're not supported by housing. We get funding mainly through immigration, skills and labor and other funding pots. And like I said, we take our staff and put them in the centers because that's the best way for us to get access and programs out to people that live in those neighborhoods. And we do go a little bit broader than the neighborhoods. So there's lots of other neighborhoods that, have social housing that we would support. And even sometimes just someone off the street that has no affiliation with our neighborhoods or centers, we can still help them. So the main thing that we do, like I said, is employment, education, learning, and what we're calling wellness. Through Snowmageddon, we started to get involved in food security, and not long after that, COVID happened and threw us right into food security work again. And that was not something that we had been doing prior, but we're doing that now. And so we're putting that under the umbrella now of wellness, because we're looking at how can CCA lift up food security and other kinds of things that would fall under the umbrella of wellness. So a couple programs we have that are employment related are our facilitators, employment facilitators. We have learning programs, Homework Haven, a scholarship program, and like I said, the food security. So that's just a little history. So why I'm speaking about professional development is because community employment facilitators, the work that we do in that stream is all career and employment. So we do quite a bit around professional development and getting people skills and getting them access to professional development and other kinds of training to get their skills up so they can get employment. And that's just some pictures of some of the team, current and past team for the CCA. So just to put some faces to the organization. So like I said, any questions, don't hesitate to jump in, because especially if I'm going too fast, let me know. What is professional development? A lot of people say, like, what is professional development? And of course, people talk about personal development. People want to know, is there a difference, and what is the difference? So professional development is a fairly broad term, and typically it just refers to any kind of continuing training and skills development that you kind of do outside of if you were doing your core training for any kind of employment. So, a lot of us track through K to 12 regular school, then we go on to post-secondary. So whether it's a 9-month program or a 9-year, double degree, we go into intensive training, and then we come out and go into the workforce, and that's kind of the typical route. So when you do training, then that happens outside of that. Once you're actually working, it's usually deemed professional development. But some occupations have a real narrow definition of professional development, or I should say a very specific one, because some sectors, for example, lots of the medicals, or probably all of the medical professions, have professional development that they have to take on an ongoing basis. It makes sure that they are up to date, and that the information that's changed since they did their last training is up to date, and that their skills are kept fresh, and they need that to be certified. But there's certification in tons of different occupations besides medical occupations, chartered accountants, psychologists, social workers. There's tons of people who are in professional sectors that require this ongoing PD. And the thing about it is most of that is taken care of just through natural processes that are already in place. I think for a lot of people who fall outside of that, for example, the work we do, we're not under a licensed umbrella for career practitioners. It does not even exist in the province. We do have the benefit of having a program that's been supported for the last 11 years, which is called the Community Employment Collaboration. And Elaine Briley over at the Murphy Center is the coordinator, and she helps lift up the sector through professional development. but we do not have like that official association. So for a lot of community-based organizations or smaller businesses, people do kind of struggle about how do I make sure that my staff have the skills that they need, and how do I go about getting professional development opportunities if I feel staff need them, or how do I even identify what the skill gaps are. So as I have there in the third point, I believe, and I think people will probably agree with me, but maybe not, every occupation can benefit from some form of professional development. And I think right now, in the situation we're in with COVID being in the middle of the pandemic, or maybe hopefully getting towards the tail end of a pandemic, I'm going to be hopeful in saying that, is that we can see that maybe the need for personal development is probably just as important as professional development. So I think you'll see people reaching out, looking for ways to support staff. I know my own self as a manager, I'm always looking as to how do I support staff besides the technical skills that they need for their actual job. What do they need to deal with stress, anxiety, the unknowns of this time that we're dealing with? So I think a lot of people are reaching out for forms of staff development that are like yoga and meditation and mindfulness activities and all these kinds of things that help people be able to deal with all the other things that are happening outside of
Sorry to
their
interrupt,
core
Kim. We had a quick question. What was the name of the program that Elaine runs again?
It's the Community Employment Collaboration. And if you Google that, that should bring you right to it. And if not, feel free to reach out to me and I'll get you that info.
I think I have Elaine's email too. She's sent
Yeah.
out a few. So TJ, I can send you her information later on.
Yeah, awesome. So yeah, and just one last point there is, I think I already mentioned, is that it can be very specific, very sector specific, or it can be more generic. So if you look at communication, some you look at the medical field again, they would have lots of communication that would be very sector specific. But then when it comes to things about, email communication and protocols around that, that's pretty generic. That can go across all fields. And, that's what we would call transferable skills. So is your workplace doing professional development? I don't know if any of our participants want to weigh in, or I can just go through it and talk as it is. Anybody want to jump in and say if their workplace is doing PD?
I don't think we really do like professional development, but I feel like by hosting all these events and activities, I feel like we sort of get some professional development out of it. So kind of.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And that's again about the umbrella, because like I said, it can be very narrow when we talk about PD, and people will have a grid of all these technical skills. And if it's not related to those technical skills, then it's not professional development. But I think over the years, we've really broadened the concept of professional development. Maybe it gets watered down sometimes too much, because maybe it gets too it falls towards personal development too much. But there's nothing wrong with personal development. I could call it staff development that's not sector specific. There's nothing wrong with that, because I think we always have to remember any employee is a person first. And so we always have to look at staff beyond this, person that is instilled with these sets of skills that, go and do your job and check the boxes. And we're not robots yet. And I hope that's not in my future. I hope I don't see that. But as long as we're human beings, I think that it's really important to look at holistically, how do we support people in those things that are not our technical skills? Because somebody told me something interesting the other day. They started work at a new job, and in this particular job that they have this process called clearing. So if you come into work and you have things on your mind, you can go to your manager and you take time to clear like whatever's going on with you. So then you can sort of have that open discussion. So people, if you're showing up differently in your workplace, people understand, your manager knows there's something going on. They can intervene to help you and support you. And sometimes people just need it to say it out loud and then move on. So I think we really do have to remember that there's human beings and emotions and all these other things that we bring into the workplace. So I think some of us are probably better at doing personal and staff development than PD, but I think it's all important. So if no one has any comment, I'd just like to talk about why sometimes people don't do professional development. And I know in my sector, I've been in the community-based sector now for almost 30 years, and typically lack of resources has always been a big barrier to participation in professional development. Years ago, remember starting out early in my career, there were always big conferences, but going to a big conference always meant travel money, hotels, registration fees, meals, et cetera, et cetera. So, we were often just not able to go because of resources. I think we're in a really interesting time now in that we have so many free options that are virtual. Now, I'll put the caveat in there that virtual is not for everybody. So I don't want anyone to think that I'm saying that that's the ideal. But I do think that we are in a time right now where we're getting a lot of access to resources, the PD opportunities that we never before. Another thing that you often hear, which I find is really interesting because it's so counter to my own thoughts, is that, you're going to train somebody and give them all these skills and then they're going to leave your workforce. And, that is totally a reality that, you can train people up and invest a lot in them and then they leave. And, that's just the luck of the draw or, as it might be. But I just really feel like if that's the thing that's holding you back from doing professional development, that you're probably losing in the end, because people need to be supported. And if you find that people are challenged by their work and they need skills upgrading or new training, I mean, the thing about it is we have to realize so much is changing and changing faster now than ever. So we have to be open to change, and we have to be open to accepting that things have to shift. I think about when I went to work in 1992, we filled out forms for the federal government on an electric typewriter. And it was in that job I only started to get exposed to computers and MS-DOS and WordPerfect. And it was really a big time of change. And I didn't start using email at work until 1998. And I wasn't even really using it a lot then, just only got sort of introduced to it. So it's really interesting that we're shifting so fast because of technology that I just think you have to be open to change, or else you're really you face, a lot of challenges that you otherwise wouldn't. I think, it goes back to that quote that change is the only constant in life. So we got to sort of learn to embrace that. And I think the bigger thing is that if people have resources they can use, or they can access free stuff, and they don't have this fear about, people leaving and running away if they train them up. I think people are always confused about like how do I go about choosing, because there's so many options out there. And we'll talk about that a little bit further down the line. Any questions happening there, Jess?
Yep, we got someone there waiting to ask a question. He got his camera on actually, so I'll just kind of let him go ahead.
All right, awesome. Hi.
Hi, I just wanted to give a bit of context. So you asked if anybody's workplaces were providing PD. I'm actually attending this as someone who's interested in being a contractor to provide said PD. So I just wanted to give you a bit of context for that, and that's my curiosity here today. So I'm just excited to hear what you have to say about it and learn from you, because this is something that I just recently started a business and I'm hoping to provide this. So if that can flavor how you present your information, or if that's something you and I can chat about later, then that would be great. But I just wanted to throw that in there. That's what I bring to the table.
Excellent. No, thank you for sharing that. And yeah, I would love to chat after, actually. I was doing a search because, there's lots of PD that I've done through the years. I was kind of like, what's really relevant now? So I'm a big Googler. So I was Googling and I was like, I know there are a lot of people out there doing PD outside of associations and stuff, just like yourself, sort of more freelance. And I said, in my first couple of pages, I wasn't finding people. So I thought that was quite interesting. So I'm glad you're on. And yes, I think probably a chat after would be valuable as well, for sure. So
fantastic. Thank you for letting me chime in.
Yeah, no worries. Anybody, anytime. So I'm just gonna look at the time there, so I don't keep you guys over an hour. 'Cause as you can probably tell already, I can talk. I do have the gift. So why is PD important? And I already just talked about it. I mean, workplaces and jobs change so fast. And like I said, I just remember being on that electronic typewriter and not knowing how to use the autocorrect on it because they had its own little whiteout thing built in. So I totally know, I've seen the change, and it's not going to stop. So we need to jump on the bandwagon. And keeping people's skills up to date and relevant is important for the person. It's important for the workplace. And of course, in our case, where we're dealing with other clients, it's very important for us. We are in the career development field, so we have to try to remain as relevant as possible. So it helps upskill the sector. It helps people to maintain their practices, improve their practices, get new information. Research is out there happening in every sector, everywhere, even if there's no professional association. We have a professional career development association at the national level, and they're always doing research. We're actually involved in a pilot project now, which is research based. And as I referenced, technology changes so much. So it's important that people have that opportunity to be able to be empowered to be able to do their jobs well. Even if people are somewhat resistant, because people can be, I mean, change is not easy for everybody. Supporting people to embrace change is really important, because at the end of the day, that will increase their competency, their excellence. It can increase their self-esteem. If you feel like you're doing your job well and you're getting good outcomes, that's going to increase your confidence, and you're going to stay attached to that work. You're going to feel inspired. I mean, whenever I do anything for staff, or whenever anybody does anything for me from a PD or personal development perspective, I feel valued and feel like, yeah, so people feel like I'm worth that investment. It's not all about every hour being clocked at my desk doing reports and proposals. And, doing it in a team setting, I think really boosts morale. Also, I mean, you don't have to do it in a team setting. It can be very individual, but if you empower your staff to say, if you have a team, like for example, there are 5 employment facilitators, and one goes off to do a training, and then they come back and share that with the rest of the team. That's leadership. That shows value to them, shows that you have confidence in them. So I think there's so many facets to it. And the other thing is, sometimes we just need a break. We need a break away from our laptops, a break away from our routine, a break away sometimes from the people that we work with. So sometimes that PD is something that people can look forward to. I know, if I reference back to like the annual conferences that used to be quite big, that obviously are not so big now during COVID, but even they were starting to decrease prior to COVID, just because of resources. Conferences are vastly expensive, but it was something people would put on their calendar and they would look forward to, even though it was work related. It was just something, kind of like, you can't quite equate it to a vacation, but it is still something that you could look forward to. That's a break in your regular routine. And all of that just drills down to, at the end of the day, happy. There's a saying, happy wife, happy life, but I think happy employees, happy life for everybody in the workplace. So I think it's really important. And at the end of the day, that really does equate out to your business, whether you're a business like CCA, which is nonprofit, and we're looking at our numbers as to client outcomes, or if you're a business that's really about dollars and cents, which TJ will be looking at it at the end of the day, is like, am I in the black or the red? PD impacts that, whether people truly get that or not. Any more questions there, Jess, before I go on?
Nope, none in there. Just TJ saying he really misses conferences, and TJ saying Keisha saying she misses people. So I think we're all in the same boat as you, Kim.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is the thing, I referenced for virtual is great. Don't get me wrong. I think we're getting so many opportunities that we never otherwise would have, but really getting to see people is something that we're all missing, and still fingers crossed that we're going to move into the post-pandemic era soon. So I guess to reference back to the earlier statement I made about a lot of people sort of being confused about how do I do PD. And some people can take it very serious. Some people it can be more of an sort of an ad hoc kind of process. But if you're really serious about it, and I think it doesn't have to be extremely formal, but if you're really serious about keeping it in the forefront, then making a list of actions or steps for achieving your occupational workplace goals. So that can be something like, for myself, I can sit as a manager with each of my individual employment facilitators, and we can map out, and you can set it for 3 months, 6 months, or a year, usually a year, and just sort of say, what kinds of things. Like recently during COVID, I sent out an email to the team, and it was breakdown of all the different kind of sectors, or not sectors per se, but focuses that career development can go in. And so I said, have a look. Where's your interest? Because some people are more interested in career development at the youth level, getting kids before they even get out in career development. Some people are more about, when people are retiring out and want to look at a different career, or sectors shift and they get pushed out of a sector and they have to retrain. So there's all kinds of things in the career field that people can really want to look and be specialized in. There's career development for newcomers. So said to staff, like, look, where is your interest lying, and what kinds of things would you like? Because then you can make a plan to go and seek out the resources to try and support that. So like I said, the process can be very informal, or it can be quite formal. So you can have templates and they're all online. There's places to get those if anybody wants to reach out, or if you're a Googler like me, feel free. Or like I said, it can be just sitting at a team meeting and asking people and making a few notes, and then going out and finding something to fit the bill. So if you're doing it really formally on an individual basis in particular, you kind of really need to look at what the employee has. So, if you look at someone who, say, was in the administrative support sector, 10 years ago, and they come back into the sector now, and they haven't, done retraining, you're going to look at, there's going to be a whole bunch of things there that they probably want to get upskilled on around technology and stuff. So it can be very individual. And then it can be like, when it comes to the career employment facilitators, lots of things have stayed the same in that field. But like I said, there's all these different branches that people could choose to. Again, going back to keeping people engaged and keeping people interested. And I think that's a key thing about professional development. Staying in a profession for a long time, you can burn out. You can just feel like, that you're spinning your wheels, especially in any kind of work that's people-centered work. We deal with people who face incredible barriers to employment and education. And sometimes it's hard not to get worn down by that. So I think professional development and staff development, whether it be meditation or something of that nature, really helps people sort of step out of that. And then you want to talk to people about where they want to go. And I think that's the hard one for a lot of employers. Like I talked about, the fear of people, of training people and then they leave. But I think you have to respect that people have that will, like people have that right, that they, bring something to the table now and they've signed on for this, but they may choose to sign off and go somewhere else. So I think you want to be honest about that, because, even if, people's end goal is to move on somewhere else, it's good to support them in that. I think it's good to support people and not let them sit with frustration. And you never know how that discussion will lend to changing things within your own workplace that could make them change their mind about wanting to go away. So I think that's important. So once you assess that, then you want to set some goals about how you're going to achieve that. So you set goals around where do you want to go and what do you want to have when you get there. And again, it's so broad, I wouldn't even really be able to drill down. I mean, if people had specific questions after the presentation that were sector or workplace specific, I could certainly, or even if you want to ask before we're finished, I might be able to give you some insight, but it is really so broad that I wouldn't be able to get right down to what kinds of goals would match your needs, but it's certainly something that we could talk about. And then you decide on your strategies and activities. And of course, for us in the community-based sector, one big thing is we don't have a big budget, so we're always looking for lots of free things. But being in the community-based sector, we have a lot of people around us that have a lot of different skills. Like me just coming and doing this presentation now, it's not necessarily a part of my manager role, but I love doing it because I love when other people will do the same thing and they share expertise and do sessions that just give you a different perspective on things. So I think we do, if we drill down beyond the things that are online now, we still have a lot of people around us in our networks that we can help us map out activities. And also we have TJ, they're going to be coming up now and offering people ways to support their PD goals as well. And I think a couple other points is set timelines, because we're all so busy and we all say we're going to do that, and then I just can't believe the time warp since COVID. And I look and I say I was going to do something in 3 months time and it's 6 months time, and I'm like, no, it can't be 6 months time, and it is 6 months time. So setting those timelines are important so it doesn't fall off the radar. And there's nothing worse than if you engage staff, get them excited about a potential professional development activity, and then it just goes to the wayside and never happens. And then they kind of get deflated because it's like, that's just false hope. So trying to set timelines and following through is important, I believe. And then rinse and repeat, like keep doing it. Just keep doing it because people need it. I think one important thing I should reference there is that when you're looking at what you want to do with staff as a whole or individually, you need to really ask them about how they like to learn. So I kind of skipped over that one there, even though I had it in the bullet, because right now we're doing a lot of stuff virtually, and it's really great that it's there, but it's not for everybody. And so you don't ever want to make assumptions that works for everybody, and then PD just becomes a burden for people. So you don't really want that to happen either. And if PD is mandatory and you're dealing with a format that's not working for people, you really need to be able to support them to sort of see if there's other avenues, or even just talking them through the process so they know that, yeah, this is not what I really want to do, but I know you got my back and you understand it, and you just talk it through. So you can probably tell my model of anything is very human centered. So resources, tons and tons of resources out there. Like I said, especially now in COVID, early days of COVID, I couldn't keep up with the emails that were coming in offering different sessions. And it's amazing. But like I said, it's not going to work for everybody. And we can get into the point where I think especially early days of COVID, when people were home in their houses and it was such a big shift and they didn't really know how to do the things that they would normally be doing because we never had the processes set up. A lot of people were gravitating to all these online sessions, but you can also saturate yourself and overwhelm yourself. So that's something you want to be mindful of. You can just take in too much, and then that's not really valuable. And the other thing about it too, that I didn't put in a bullet point, but it came to me as I was putting the PowerPoint together, is that giving people like opportunities to engage in PD, like going to conferences. I remember going to conferences when I was early in my career. It was so exciting. You come back so inspired and happy. You met people that were like-minded and doing the same work, and you saw all these concepts and ideas, and then you came back, you had no legs to make it happen. So you want to be mindful that if you're giving people PD opportunities, is it something they can actually bring back and put in place in the workforce? And then it's not just going to be some idea that inspired them for 2 days and then they lose it all because there's just no way to apply it in the real world. So other places to get resources, definitely any association connected to your sector. So like there's the Trucking Association for the Atlantic Provinces, we got Engineering Association, the Medical Association. For teachers, you got NLTA, and the government has their own professional learning website for teachers. And there's tons and tons in sectors, typically. For people outside of the sectors, there are people like me that you can turn to ask for some places to look. Like I said, we know TJ is going to be in our corner now to look to, but there are resources on the ground. It's just sometimes checking in with people like Skills Canada, Keisha, and seeing what is out there, because sometimes it's so hard to keep your finger on the pulse of what's out there and what's available. And local is great if available. Obviously, buy local is a big thing. So obviously it's about the money, but that local context can make a huge difference. Someone in Toronto talking about career and employment barriers and someone talking about it in like Tollingate, where I'm from, totally different place. And you might notice I drop and add my H's sometimes. So that's a Tollingate thing. So I apologize if that would cause any kind of breakdown in communication. One that I thought you guys should really know about, and I know that Keisha is familiar, and that's the Techno Tutors, and that's a great local resource, and they're doing tons of things online. Like, you think about generic PD that we could all use, password management. I don't know anyone who couldn't use that, or help with their privacy settings on social media, or intro to Gmail and Google Docs and Dropbox and all of it. Like, it's a lot to take in. And if people didn't operate at all electronically or very little before COVID and now have to make that shift, Techno Tutors is the place to go. It's a project out of the Community Sector Council, and it's free. So I'm not sure how long that's going to be in existence, but I think it's really great while it's there. The Gardner Center over at Mon, also, they do things, effective meeting management, effective email communication. There are a lot of resources out there. But again, the planning piece first, see what budget you have. Is it going to be individually based? Is it going to be a group of people? What are you looking? What kind of format are you looking at? And then what particular skills you want to upskill, and then just start Googling, but start reaching out to people, in particular Skills Canada, and I'm sure they will certainly help you along the way. Any questions there now, Jess?
Nope, none as of right now.
All righty, so we're at 2:43, and I'm just going to open it up because I could talk on forever, but I don't want to do that. I think I've hit a lot of points there, and I don't know, Keisha, do you have any questions that you'd like to throw my way?
No questions, but I think you hit on a lot of really good points, especially talking about, people in different sort of stages of their career, like newcomers, more experienced workers, those who are transitioning from one career to another, and, especially youth, because Skills Canada deals with all of those demographics quite a lot. And, that's kind of where my research is based around, like in terms of skill gaps, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
So, when we do sort of like survey people and employers and different individuals, it's on a basis of more experienced workers, like you mentioned, but also less experienced workers, or people who are just coming into the workforce. And I think that the skills and stuff that they need are not different, but the skills that they have are different, and the skills that they need to work on are different, and that's based on person to person, but also the stages in their career. I will hand it over to TJ though, because I think he wants to have a little chat with you. So I'll let him ask away, and you guys can have a little conversation.
Yeah, awesome.
As long as that's okay, I don't want to monopolize. I know you do have another attendee, so I don't want to be that guy that takes over the camera time. But
no, you go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you for your time, and thank you for the session. And I'm glad I was able to attend. I actually had a quick question to help differentiate. You mentioned that there were differences between professional development versus personal/staff development.
Yeah.
So how would you sort of delineate those two? How would you break them apart? I'm wondering where I might fall.
Yeah, sure. And you know what? I'd say right now, a lot of it is very gray, because you are in an era where you're getting a lot more opportunities that years ago people would say, oh, that's not professional development, that's personal development. Oh, you can't do that in the workplace, that's not appropriate. So you get some of that, right? But nowadays, I think people do realize that what we years ago would call professional development, which might be like a meditation or mindfulness activity or a nature walk, people would say, well, that's personal development. People recognize that people are human, and we come to the table as this complex being, and that we can't take our emotions and everything else and just put them over there while we do our work. So that anything that falls under that more like personal development, so emotional learning or mental health or things like that, people see that now as integral to your profession and how you show up in the workplace. So I think it's still a bit of a gray area, but I think you'll find more people are leaning towards saying part of our professional development or staff development will be activities that are mental health or emotional learning. And people usually couch it inside of team building, because team building is vastly important. So if that's the kind of thing that you kind of want to think about for your business approach, is that a lot of that can fall under team building, and team building, squarely falls within a skill in the workplace, unless you're working by yourself.
Fair.
Working in a team.
Just for a bit of context, if I may, can I tell you a little bit about my business idea? Yeah. Well, I'm looking at, I've sort of already done some work, but I'm still finding my legs with it here in St. John's and in the province. But I wanted to focus more on LGBTQ inclusion. So 2S LGBTQ inclusion within the workplace. So looking at HR practice, hiring, retention, those sorts of things, how we can build more accepting cultures. So I think that would entail staff training. So I wasn't sure if that would be PD or if that would be staff.
Yeah.
So
no, that's professional development, because in our case, and it's good for any employer should be skilled at inclusive practices. So that falls squarely within professional development or employer development, business development. So, it's very relevant. It's very needed. So I don't even think that is anything that people would consider personal development, whether they call it staff development. Sometimes we put these different names on it because it's funders and their categories of funding. So we get all kinds of funky names, like, used to be executive director, now it's general manager. I'm like, I don't care what you call me, just, whatever. So
just give me my paycheck, right?
Just give me my paycheck.
Yeah.
No, but seriously though, like that work is very needed, and that really falls under, and not even just professional development. When you talk about what we provide to employees, that's sort of like it's employer. It's an employer support. It's an employer training. It's very important at the employer level to have that, not just because you will find in some workplaces that they'll have an employer and they're like, oh yeah, get all that stuff, it's all good, because they're just checking a box or whatever. But they themselves are buying into that, and that's not going to work either, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
that's definitely one of the things I've been trying to consider. Is a lot of folks will look at what I want to do as, okay, well, we can just tick the box, but it's a little bit more than just a 3-hour session for your staff or for your management. There needs to be that follow through piece. So
yeah. And TJ, that's a really good point, because like I talked about doing conferences in early years and coming back and having no way to apply it, is that PD should be so much broader than a 1-hour webinar or a 3-hour session, just somebody talking at you. You really do need to be able to sit down, and for the work that you're doing for your sector, is like, you need to get into workplaces, you need to walk around, you need to see, is there, I always talk, I have a physical disability, so I use a wheelchair. And when I do, work around accessibility and stuff, I often throw out and say, accessibility and inclusion is broad strokes. So if I'm going to be out advocating for an accessible washroom for, someone who has a physical disability, it needs to be a gender inclusive, accessible washroom. And then the other side of it is, if someone's out advocating for a gender inclusive washroom, it should be physically accessible, gender inclusive. So it's like we've all got to sort of get in there together, and just talking about it is great for getting people to start thinking it. But a lot of that work needs to be on the ground. When you're looking at workplaces, you're sitting with people. Like, part of like PD that you would gain in a conference setting was that you could have that time with people outside of your sessions, and you have lunch with them, and you get to know people a little bit different. You get to see some of their more natural ways of being. And so if you're really going to instill change like that, you really need to be able to get inside of it a little bit. So because people will show up quite differently. If I'm here, I have to be professional, I have to check all the boxes, but then maybe over lunch you'll start to see maybe there's a champion there that was too shy to speak up, that's going to help you, or maybe there's going to be somebody that's going to be a thorn in your side because they haven't really made the change. They're just nodding because they feel like, yeah, I got to do that because that's my professional role. So there's lots. I mean, I could go on for hours. I think we could talk for days on this. But I applaud you.
We should definitely connect. I think, yeah.
It's badly needed. Yeah, for sure. So good luck with all that.
Thank you. And thank you for highlighting that too, because I mean, that intersectional piece is really important. You know, if I'm on the ground talking to folks about, like you said, the neutral washrooms, the access to washrooms, I mean, there's no point. I know one of the things that we encounter in this particular work is, okay, you say you have a gender neutral bathroom, but you have to go, to the other side of the building, or it's hidden behind a closet, or you have to get a key from someone, or, and similarly, if you need a physically accessible washroom, there's, no point if you got to take an elevator ride or whatever the case may be, right? So
absolutely, yeah.
I get that the saying you have something and actually having it are two different things.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so the points for sure. TJ, just to like sort of elaborate on that, I once worked in a place where it was mainly women, and there was 2 bathrooms side by side on that specific floor, and they were both women's bathrooms. So the men would have to go to the other side of the building in order to use the washroom, and the accessible washroom was on the other side of the building as well. And it was also gender neutral, but that's sort of like off topic, but yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
that's not really access,
It's not, no. I think like a lot of these things are conversations that definitely needed to be had and still need to be had, especially on the side of like professional development. And I feel like I definitely needed this presentation more than anybody. I feel like I didn't really know the definition until you really got into it, and I was like, okay, yeah, like this makes more sense than what I was thinking in my own head. So but yeah, I think we'll cut it off there, and
I just want to make one follow-up comment to that, if I can.
Yeah.
So yeah, when you're talking about the definition, I think it's interesting because a lot of us drill down on, we have very technical skills and we're upgrading them all the time, but people that are heavy technical skills often lack a lot of soft skills. So PD and soft skills is good, and then vice versa. So you get a lot of people who might be in careers like myself, more softer skills, you're doing counseling and supports like that sometimes the technical skills are sometimes lacking. So there's always room for movement, and the definition is, like I said, can be very broad and sometimes watered down. But one other last thing to think about, and I think TJ, this is probably helpful for you as well, is that PD is always great if it's augmented with some form of mentorship. So if you have people that can mentor other people, and so like when I refer to a champion, a mentor might be another way you want to frame that up when you're doing it in the workplace, because that might be more palatable terminology for some people. But mentoring is great because then you just have someone that you can turn to all the time and get support from and learn from it. Sometimes just watch and learn. So thank you so much for the opportunity, guys.
Thank you so much for letting me ask those questions, and thank you for letting me throw in there, Keisha. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, yeah. I think like in terms of mentoring, like Kim said, it's super important. And we're actually working with Avalon Employment, and they have a mentorability program for those with disabilities. And I think that's super important to throw out here because they are amazing. They do amazing work. And I just sort of wanted to name drop them in case anybody's interested in learning a little more about it. But thank you so much, Kim, for a super informative presentation, and for the banter in between. I think it was really important just to have this conversation. If anybody else has any questions or anything, feel free to shoot them to me, and I'll get them to Kim. Just as a last sort of point, I just want to thank the provincial government because they help fund these events, and information sessions and workshops like we do wouldn't be possible without them. And if anybody wants to check out CCA, they have a website. It's www.ccanl.com. So check it out. .ca, sorry. Yeah.
No worries.
Bye, guys.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Kim.